TNBS presents the Friday Night NFL Week 5 Pick'em Podcast. I'm your host, Tommy, aka Millsy, and tonight I'm joined by.
What's going on? Casey Smith here. I'm back again. My Twitter handle's Smitty15155 if you're trying to look me up.
Let's get it. Back in action.
Back again.
Well, glad to have you back on. Oh,
Good to be back.
been a wild couple weeks in the NFL.
Yeah, just been taking in the football for the first 4 weeks, man. It's been pretty crazy.
Yeah, before we hop into it, what's your opinion of the first 4 weeks of the season? Kind of playing out how you expected? Is it a little different than you expected? What are your feelings so far?
I feel like there's a little, I think actually the Falcons are, since I'm a fan of them, they've been underproducing. I mean, they're just these last second losses, so it's been hard for being a Falcons fan. But other than that, I think it's been a pretty good season. A lot of good teams out there, I think. A lot of surprising teams, too, like the Titans and the Dolphins.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the Falcons are, it's showing now how much they're really missing Keanu Neal and Deion Jones.
Yeah, they're really hurting in their defense. They're missing, I think, it was 4 starters now, at least 4 or 5.
I mean, we saw last night with the Colts, they're missing, what was it, something like 8 starters overall. It's just tough for teams
It
to.
was pretty crazy. I've never seen that before, but the Colts actually, they didn't have room to deactivate people, so they had to just put people, keep them active, but they just didn't play.
They couldn't play. Yeah, that's the amount of injuries they had last night it was wild, and
Yeah.
that just kind of backs up the point of the Thursday night football games not being, the best quality because you don't have that recovery time.
Yeah, it was a good matchup, though. I mean, at least the Colts made it a little interesting.
Yeah, I took the Patriots minus 10.5, so I was happy.
Nice.
But yeah, let's jump right into this. And speaking of those Falcons, we got the Falcons at the Steelers. Game's expected to be a shootout. Really high total here, 58 points. Steelers are given 3.5. What are we doing here with the Falcons?
I mean, I think that I think it's going to be a close game, and I honestly think it's going to probably come. I think it's going to come down to a field goal. To tell you the truth, I just think, but I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as people think. I mean, the Falcons' offense has been explosive, but that's been because their last 2 games have been at home. Just like you'll see, maybe like week 1 at the Eagles. Matty Ice is a different person when he's outside that dome. So I honestly think that the Steelers are going to win. However, I think that it'll be a 3-point game, so I would take the Falcons with the spread.
And that is a pretty high over at or over under at 58. I mean that's like you had
A lot
mentioned,
of points.
the Falcons have been putting up points, so have the Steelers, but that's usually when spreads are over unders are that high, they usually don't tend to reach it. But what do you think about that? You think they top that, or you think it's going to be a
I don't
little
know.
closer than that?
You said it's 58, right?
Yeah,
So you're
58.
each going to have to score 29 points. I don't see that happening. I'd see it probably being in like them scoring in the 20s. I could see, but I don't think they're going to break that. I think I would take the under.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Matty Ice on the road is a bit of a different quarterback, especially on grass as opposed to even turf. So
Hmm.
that with the, it's hard to say Julio's really been struggling because he's still been putting up the numbers, but he's still not getting in the end zone, and that is a little worrisome. They do get Devontae Freeman
Very
back this week.
gruesome. That's a nice addition to the team.
For sure. But it just makes you wonder, how is he going to get a full complement of snaps? Are they going to split time with him and Tevin Coleman?
I
And
think he'll definitely split time. It'll be like an A1, like a B1 kind of thing.
yeah, that's what I was feeling. I just don't like teams that go kind of 50-50 on the carries. It's just kind of hard for the running backs to get in a rhythm. So that worries me a
Actually, I'm
bit.
not really a fan either.
I see it. We saw it with the Jets last weekend with Crowell and Powell, and Crowell was getting stopped in the backfield almost every play, and he just couldn't get in rhythm. And that worries me a bit about the Falcons and the fact that they haven't really established that run game this year. I don't think they've topped they've topped 100 yards rushing once, right? Tevin Coleman went for like
Yeah,
19 for 108.
yeah, he did. Besides that, though, he hasn't really done much besides that one game.
So that does worry me a bit. And then on the same side with the Steelers, James Conner kind of fallen off since that first week. So I think I'm
This
definitely
might
going to
be a
take.
get-right game for him, though.
That's what I'm thinking. That this is going to
And
be a bit
nail
of a
the
running.
Falcons defense.
Exactly. And on the flip side, Pittsburgh's defense has struggled. I think a lot of people are expecting this to be, a shootout in terms of passing, but I could see both teams trying to establish the run and kind of slowing the game down a bit. So yeah, I'm going to take the Steelers across the board though, and I'm going to take the under. I can't trust Matty Ice on the road.
I'm trying really hard to. I mean, it pains me to pick the Steelers, but
I have to
I
say
do
that
think they win.
that's the hard part of when you try to pick your team's game because you tend to over rationalize it or overthink it, and you don't want to be a homer. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but we'll leave Pittsburgh and head to Buffalo, where the Titans are coming in as 3.5 point favorites. Low total in this game at 39.
Oh wow, that is pretty low. Um, I mean, the Titans, they've definitely been a surprise this year. I like them to beat the Bills this weekend.
Yeah,
Uh,
you have
what's up?
faith in Marcus Mariota.
Uh, let's see. With the spread, I think the Titans are gonna win this game. I'm sorry, I was just thinking about this game because honestly, I didn't know. I think that the Titans will come up and they'll run the ball pretty good on the Bills. Just dominate the ball, dominate possession, and probably win by a touchdown or two. So I'm gonna take the Titans across the board. I think that they'll beat the spread. I could see the Titans putting in a couple touchdowns. Maybe the Bills getting a little bit of garbage, or so I could see them beating the over.
I'm going to take the Bills in this game. I see this as a letdown spot for Tennessee. They're coming off of a huge win against Philly. An
Totally
overtime
understand.
win. We've seen this with teams before where they're, a mediocre team in terms of talent. Tennessee's not going to blow you away with talent. They have some pieces like Corey Davis, Deion Lewis. Deion Lewis hasn't really been consistent this year. Derrick Henry hasn't been able to establish himself. Marcus Mariota's been banged up. So traveling going into Buffalo, I think Buffalo plays the team spoiler this week. I think that's their role that they kind of play this season. And I just think that this is a bit of a trap game for the Titans. So I'm taking the Bills across the board, and I'm going to take the under. I think it's like a 17-10 game. I like the Bills' defense in this game. I don't trust Marcus Mariota. I just can't trust the Bills' offense and Josh Allen to go out and put up 20 points or so, which I think one of these teams is going to have to touch 20 points in order for this spread in order to beat this over. I just don't see either one of these teams doing it. So like I said, maybe a 17-10 or a 17-14 Titans win with that half a point being the kicker. But we'll head out of Buffalo and head to Cincinnati, where the Dolphins are coming into Cincy 6.5 point underdogs with a over/under of 48. Cincy broke a lot of hearts last week of Falcon fans, but you got a good look at them. What do you think
That
about?
late touchdown was real rough, but
Yeah,
I mean, I think the Bengals have a pretty solid offense this year, and they're going to be getting a boost with Joe Mixon back. So I think the Bengals are going to win this game. I think the Dolphins, I mean, they had a few started off 3-0, but I still think they are overrated. Going into Cincinnati, I think that the Bengals will win this by a touchdown at least. What was the over/under for this game? You said
48.
48. I'm gonna take the under in this just because I don't think the Dolphins are gonna be able to score up to 20. So I don't think they're gonna break that.
I agree. I'm going to take the under as well. I think Cincy puts up around 20 to 24 points. Maybe 28, 27. I just don't see the Dolphins scoring much. The Bengals also get a boost on defense with Vontez Burfict back. Their offense has been dynamic so far this year. The emergence of Tyler Boyd finally coming into his own. AJ Green still is AJ Green. Andy Dalton, he's still throwing a little bit of interceptions, but the touchdowns are great to see. As you mentioned, getting Joe Mixon back. Losing Tyler Eifert hurts, but that's not a crippling blow to the offense. So I like the Bengals in this matchup quite a bit. I just don't see the Dolphins doing much. Like you had said, them being overrated, I agree 100%. I just don't see it with them. I mean, Kenny Stills is their number one receiver. He's a solid player, but he's not a number one wide receiver. And they're still splitting time between Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore. So until that switches and they go to more of a 70-30,
And
80-20
he
split
hasn't really
with
done
Drake
anything
as the
either.
favorite, I can't trust this Dolphins offense.
Agreed.
But we will head out of Cincinnati, head over to Cleveland for the Ravens at the Browns. Browns are 2.5 point favorite or 2.5 point underdogs at home with a total of 45 coming off of that devastating 45-42 loss in Oakland last week. What are we going to do here? Is this a letdown spot for the Ravens or they keep rolling?
I actually think this might be a letdown spot for the Ravens. After I watched some of the Browns game last week, and I really liked how their offense was looking. I mean, I think their defense should come around better at home too, and not on the road in Oakland. I mean, that is a long travel, and normally teams from the East don't really fare that well when they go out west. So I think the Browns are gonna win this game straight up. What's the over under for this game?
45.
45. I think it's gonna break. Honestly, I mean they scored 42 themselves last week. I know the Ravens defense is much better, but I still think them playing at home is a big advantage. That dog pound gets crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see the 42 points put up by the Browns last week, but I didn't come away that impressed from it. Baker Mayfield had 4 turnovers. He lost 2 fumbles and threw 2 interceptions. The game against the Jets, he had a should have been interception go off the chest or the shoulder of Daryl Middleton. He also on his first drive that he came in also was strip sacked, but they luckily recovered. So that could be 6 turnovers on the year in 2 games already in 1.5 games. So I think this Ravens defense is going to cause a lot of problems for Mayfield. I think they're going. They also, I believe, they get Jimmy Smith back this week. The Ravens do, so
Yeah,
that'll
they.
be a huge boost. And they could throw Jimmy Smith on Jarvis Landry and cause some headaches there. So I like the Ravens across the board, and I'm gonna have to take the under though. I just as well as Joe Flacco's played, I still can't trust him on the road. Um, Alex Collins will play, but they're splitting carries between him and Javoris Allen. It goes back to that, like we mentioned, with the Falcons trying to get in a rhythm. So I'm gonna take the Ravens across the board. I think they keep rolling. We'll leave Cleveland and head to New York for Broncos at the Jets. The Jets are giving a 0.5 point, total of 42.5. I don't know how the Jets could be favored at even a 0.5 point against the Broncos, but
Yeah.
what do you think about this one?
Uh, I mean, I just think the Jets have been on a downward spiral. They're going to be without Tremaine Johnson as well this week, I'm pretty sure. So I like the Broncos, especially when they're getting point 0.5. I mean, regardless of a tie, but I think the Broncos would take this one. What was the over under?
42.5.
42 and a half. I don't think this game's going to be that high scoring, so I'm going to take the under. I just think that the Broncos are probably going to run the ball with their committee of Royce Freeman and Philip Lindsay. Short completions. And the Jets. I mean, I think it'll be a close game, but they've been on a, like I said, downward spiral. I think after that first win week 1, so I think they're going to continue that and not be able to pick up the win here.
Yeah, I agree. When when I first started looking at these spreads, and the Jets were actually at one point 1.5 point under, or 1.5 point favorites. That was kind of mind-boggling to me. I just don't see it. I don't understand how they can be favored in a game. I mean, they've had one good performance week one at Detroit, but that's week one. I mean,
Week
they've
one,
struggled. Sam
yeah.
Darnold struggled mightily. They can't get the run game going. Jeremy Bates has struggled. They're an undisciplined team right now. The O-line's a shambles. I've said it before about the Jets O-line. You can't glue popsicle sticks together and call it offense. So, I mean, they're in a world of trouble. This Broncos defense hasn't hit its stride yet. I think this is a get right week for them. You know, I could realistically see them getting about 5 or 6 sacks with 2 interceptions in this game. And as you mentioned, Tremaine Johnson being out, that's pretty devastating for the Jets because Buster Screen is best fit for the slot. And while they'll probably still keep him there, you know, it's going to be a major downgrade from Tremaine Johnson to, I believe, I don't know, shit, I can't remember the third. Might even be Daryl Roberts. So, I mean, that's going to be a big blow for him. So I'm going to have to take the Broncos across the board, and I'm also going to have to take the under. I tend to agree. I think the Jets also try to establish the run to try to slow the game down a bit, along with the Broncos. So we'll head out of New York and head to Detroit, where the Packers are coming in as 1.5 point favorites, and we got a potential shootout here with an over/under of 51.
My one thing my motto is always never bet against Aaron Rodgers, especially when he's playing in the division. So I'm going to take the Packers here. I mean, I think between the two quarterbacks, between Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, like Aaron Rodgers is just his clutch factor is just amazing. So you know that if he gets the ball at the end of the game, he's going to drive down the field and they're going to score and win somehow. It always happens. The Lions haven't been that impressive after. I mean, they did beat the Patriots, but before that, they got trampled by the Jets. I mean, they're looking up right now, but I still like the Packers in this game, even if they're giving a 1.5 to the Lions. And I think it's actually going to be a shootout, since none of these defenses really like to play defense, it seems, in games where they aren't playing the Bills. But so I'm going to take the over, too.
This one's I've kind of I've flipped stances on this one. Coming into it at first look, I was like, oh, Packers, no doubt. But Randall Cobb's questionable, and I mean, I didn't get a chance to check and see if he returned to practice today or not. But if he didn't return to practice today, he's likely going to be out on Sunday. Geronimo Allison didn't get cleared out of the concussion protocol, so he's excuse me, he's likely to be out this weekend. If both of them are out, we're going to be relying on, and Devontae Adams was also questionable, but he is likely to play. But if both of Cobb and Allison are out, the Packers are going to be relying on 3 rookie wide receivers. One was drafted in the 4th round, one in the 6th round, and one in the 5th round, one in the 6th round. So they weren't highly touted rookies either. So I think that could be an issue for the Packers in this game. I actually like the Lions across the board. I think the Lions pull it out. I mean, it's a little bit of a desperation for the Lions right now at 1-3, and with the injuries to the Packers offense, even if Allison and Cobb do play, you know, Cobb's injury is a hamstring. You know, that could get aggravated at any point. And the Lions have actually been, I believe they're the #1 team against the pass this year in terms of yardage. And they do have a top corner in Darius Slay, so they could potentially, I don't want to say shut down Devontae Adams, but contain Devontae Adams. So I actually like the Lions in this game, mostly just because of the amount of injuries to the Packers. But I do agree with the shootout potential. I think both teams try to establish the run early and kind of fail and find some success through the air and abandon the run game early. Which, if you play DFS, Ty Montgomery and Theo Riddick, I like, are 2 great sleepers this week.
I like Riddick this week.
The Jags at the Chiefs, one of the better matchups of the week. Chiefs are at home giving 3.5 points. This game has a little bit of a surprisingly high total at 49.
I'm actually really excited for this game to see probably the best offense in the league play against the best defense in the league right now. I kind of like the Jaguars in this game, just because I think they're getting some points, and because I think that their defense will be able to stop the Chiefs some, but the Chiefs' defense will not be able to stop the Jaguars. The Jaguars will use short completions and running plays to just kill the clock, get first downs, move the ball, and then hopefully keep the game low scoring and win. So I'm gonna take the Jaguars, getting 3.5 points. What was the over under for this again?
49.
49. I'm actually gonna take the under for this game. I think it's gonna be a low scoring.
I would be a little bit more concerned for Kansas City if this game was in Jacksonville. Um, I I do see the shootout potential in this game though. The Jags did give up over 40 points twice last year, and this defense is very similar from last year. Obviously, they've had another year to gel together and whatnot, but for the most part, player-wise, they're the same. Pat Mahomes is playing at an unbelievable level. Showed his ability to rush last week, got his first career rushing touchdown, threw another touchdown, threw for over 300 yards, didn't turn the ball over. And that was a very good defense in the Broncos. This is one game that I'm struggling to pick, but I like the Chiefs straight up, but I like the Jaguars with the spread. It's another one of those situations. I think this game's a field goal game, and I think that half a point, again, is the kicker in terms of the spread. So I like the Jags with the spread, and I'm going to take the over. I think there's some quiet shootout potential in this game that you know, maybe like myself, at first look, I'm like, there's no way that this total can be over 46 points. But then I thought a little more about it, and I'm like, well, this offense is scoring 30 something points a game. The Jaguars' offense is scoring 20 something points a game. Blake Bortles is playing the best football of his career. He's got two dynamic, two dynamic wide receivers in D.D. Westbrook and Keelan Cole. So I agree. I like the Jags in this game, getting the points, and I could see them winning straight up very easily. This defense is no joke, as you said, one of the best in the league. But we'll head out of KC and head over to Carolina, where we got the Giants at the Panthers. The Panthers are giving 6.5. Game's got a 43.5 point total. Giants stop the skid, or does Carolina come out with a W off the bye week?
I think Carolina's going to come out with a W coming out of the bye week. I just think the Giants, their offensive line is still a wreck, and the Panthers' defensive line should be able to eat that up. And I love my man Luke Kuechly. He should be able to contain Barkley, hopefully. But I think the Panthers are going to be hungry coming out of their bye, and the Giants are they're a mess right now. They have Odell saying things about they can't throw the ball downfield. Like, that's just not good when they're infighting like that and stuff's coming up through the media. So especially because they're going into Carolina, I definitely expect the Panthers to win. What was the spread for this game?
The spread was 6.5.
Oh, I meant not
Over under 43 and a half, sorry.
43.5. I think it's gonna be under, just because I don't see it being that high scoring. I don't think the Giants are gonna be able to score that much. Maybe kick a couple field goals, get a touchdown. But I think I'm gonna take the under.
This is another one I've struggled with, and to me, I think the one thing that stands out about this game to me is the over, and I think at 43.5, I think this game is actually going to shoot out. I don't think either one of these defenses are really that good. The Giants have the talent, but they just aren't playing up to that right now. And as far as the Panthers' offense, the Panthers are still three. They might have gotten one of the three offensive linemen back this week, but they're still going to be down at least two starting offensive linemen. Still no Greg Olsen. They haven't had a number 2 wide receiver emerge yet. I think, you put Janoris Jenkins on Devin Funchess. I think this is a get-right spot for the Giants. I think this is just a perfect matchup for them. On the offensive side of the ball, there's just too much for the Panthers to try to contain with Sterling Shepard, Odell, and Saquon. While I do agree with the Giants' offensive line is still a mess. The Panthers aren't. They don't have a great pass rush. They don't have a bad pass rush, but they're about middle of the pack. So I'm not too scared of that. I think Saquon's going to have a game. I think this is going to be an Odell get right spot. I kind of agree with Odell to an extent. I mean, you don't go about it that way, but I do agree with him. The Giants can't throw the ball down the field, and the Giants, when you have a player of Odell's caliber, you need to get him the ball. You need to find ways to get him the ball. You need to move him around, which they stopped doing. They stopped lining up Odell in the slot. I think since week 2, he's lined up in the slot something like 35 or 34% of the time, as opposed to 42% of the time the first 2 weeks. So I think they need to move him around a little bit more and get a little more creative with him, just because of the caliber of player he is. But I think they do that this week. To me, this is a must-win spot for the Giants to keep the season alive right now. Nobody's running away with the NFC East, but you don't want to fall too far behind. And I just think the Panthers, there just isn't enough there to really scare me. I mean, I could see them winning the game straight up, but 6.5 is way too much to be giving, in my opinion, for a team that's banged up, that's had its struggles at times this year. I know they've only played the 3 games, but they have had some struggles there. I mean, look at the game against the Falcons. In that game, it was closer because they scored a touchdown almost as time expired. So that's what made that, made it look a little closer than it actually was. So I like the Giants in this game, and like I said, it's got some quiet shootout potential to me. So I'm going to take the over. We'll head out of Carolina and head to LA, where we have Oakland coming in as 5.5-point underdogs to the Chargers. Another shootout potential game with a total of 52.5.
I think I like the Chargers in this game, even with them giving 5.5 points. I just the Raiders, their defense, they have no pass rush. I mean, they traded Khalil Mack, and
How's
look
that
at
working
the
out?
defense. How's that working out for them? Not very good. Chargers, I like their offense a lot. I mean, I think they've been moving the ball very well lately. I like the combo of Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler, honestly. Phillip Rivers has been throwing the ball all around. Mike Williams has been playing great for them. Even though Keenan Allen's a little banged up, their offense has still been very good this year. So I definitely like them. What was the over-under for this one?
52.5.
52.5. I actually think I'm going to take the over in this game. I definitely think there's shootout potential because the Chargers, their offense has been playing good, but their defense is playing pretty horrible.
Yeah,
So I think they're going to be able to I think they're going to give up some points. I mean, I wouldn't say pretty horrible, but I mean, they haven't been on par of what everyone thought they were going to be this year.
no, they've been pretty bad. This was one team when I was doing the season previews. This was one team that I was really on the minority about, and it's kind of playing out exactly how I thought. They're an explosive offense, but they just don't have the pieces on defense. I didn't understand I mean, there was a consensus thing though. I mean, ESPN, um, Bleacher Report, everywhere. Anybody who had rankings of defenses or rankings of teams, the Chargers were ranked as a top 10, top 12 defense in the NFL. I just didn't see it, even with a healthy Joey Bosa. Even then, the defensive line is Joey Bosa, Corey Liuget, and pass rushers, and Melvin Gordon. Liuget's a defensive tackle. Bosa is very good, and Melvin Gordon's solid. But
Melvin Ingram, right?
Melvin Ingram, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, it's all good.
Melvin Ingram. Outside of that, it's Jason Verrett and it was Trevor Williams or something. A rookie or second round player has been pretty solid, but they're not a worrisome or fearsome defense to me. But the offense is explosive. I like the Chargers. I like the Chargers across the board in this game, and I'm going to take the over as well. I think the Raiders keep it competitive for the most part, but I think we see like the Chargers end up winning 34-27, 34-26 in that range. So I like the Chargers across the board, and I like the over in this. Like you mentioned, the Raiders can't stop anything right now. We'll leave LA and head to Seattle, where the Red Hot Rams are 7.5 point favorites in Seattle. With this game's got a total of 50.
I think the Rams are going to continue their hot streak in this one, and I think that they'll even beat the spread. Actually, I don't know about that. Like 7.5 points is a lot to give in the NFL. I think it'll be a closer game, but I think the Rams are going to pull it out. So I'm going to take Seattle with the spread, but I still think that their offense will be red hot. I think that Seattle will find a couple ways to score. They'll keep it interesting for a while, but I'm not a fan of Seattle this year. I think they're going to keep up their terrible games. They can't block on offense. Their defense isn't just not nearly what it was. The Legion of Boom is completely gone and destroyed.
Yeah, now they just lost Earl Thomas too.
And they just lost Earl Thomas, definitely their best defensive player by far for the season, and he just flipped off the whole team on the way off. So I don't know how that's going for the Seahawks, but yeah, what was the over/under for this one?
This has me thinking a bit. It's 50.
50. I definitely think it's going to go over. I think the Seahawks are going to be able to score some. I think they'll manufacture some ways. Maybe Russell Wilson finally gets out of the pocket and runs a little bit, opens that up. But yeah, I'm going to take the over.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's been going on with Russ. Their offensive line isn't very good, but we haven't seen him take off and run like we have in years past, which to me doesn't make much sense because that's when he's always been at his best, when he takes off and runs and leaves the defense guessing. But in this matchup, I'm going to have to, it's tough when you see 7.5 points for a team that's on the road in a divisional matchup against in a place as tough to play as Seattle. So I'm going to have to take the Rams straight up, but I'm going to take Seattle with the spread. It's a lot to give up in a divisional game on the road. And with Doug Baldwin back, Tyler Lockett's emerged. Chris Carson's supposed to play this week. I'm gonna take the Rams straight up. I'm gonna take the Seahawks with the spread, and I'm gonna take the over in this game as well. I think the Rams. It's gonna be a lot of the Seahawks trying to keep pace. You know what? I'm gonna switch that. I'm gonna take the Rams across the board. I think they end up winning by 10. Now that I think about it a little more, just looking at the Seahawks offense, I just see them trailing throughout this game and playing catch up the whole game and keeping it just close enough where the Rams, kind of like last week with the Vikings, the way the Rams would score, but at no point did it feel like the Rams weren't in control of that game. So I think the same thing happens this week, and I'm gonna take the Rams across the board. We'll head out of Seattle and into Philly for the nosebleed sections matchup of week NFL Week 5 matchup of the week. The Vikings at the Eagles. Eagles are at home, giving 3.5 points. Both teams coming off tough losses. It's got an over/under of 46. What do you think about this rematch from last year, or this potential playoff match? Excuse me.
Both of these teams were perennial Super Bowl contenders to start the year, but they really haven't looked like it. So it is really tough to pick. But I think I'm taking the Eagles at home, just because I think home field is really going to be the difference in this one. The Vikings are also pretty banged up right now. Offensive line, running back, defense too. Isn't it Xavier Rhodes? Isn't he a little banged up? Is he even playing? I'm not sure. I think so, but
he's supposed to play, but he is a little banged up. Everson Griffin can be out again.
They got torched by the Rams last week, so I think this could be a get-right spot for Carson Wentz this week, honestly. Give himself maybe a couple touchdowns, get back in the groove of things, but I'm taking the Eagles in this one.
What about that 46-point over/under? I feel like that's a little low for this matchup, but what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a little low. I think it's going to be pretty high scoring. I mean, the Vikings, they can score. They got a good offense, and they'll be able to keep pace, I think, with the Eagles. But in the end, I think the Eagles are going to take it.
I'm on the flip side. I'm taking the Vikings across the board. Don't ask me how or don't ask me why after that defensive performance last week. I think that's going to get rectified, though. Out of the 5 Goff passing touchdowns, 3 of them were on Anthony Barr.
Yeah, it's just great scheming, honestly, by the Rams last week.
They exposed Barr and had Barr in coverage on wide receivers, which can't happen, and I don't think will happen again this week. The Rams have 3 potential Pro Bowl wide receivers. The Eagles have 2 solid wide receivers and a solid tight end. So that becomes a little bit more guardable because if I think Anthony Barr could match up with Zach Ertz better than he would match up against Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods.
Definitely, yeah.
I think the Vikings do scheme a bit better this week to get Barr out of coverage on wide receivers and into a bit more of a pass rushing role with Everson Griffin out. They did lose a lot of pass rush with him. I just like this. The Eagles are beatable through the air. So far in their 2 losses this year, they've given up over 300 passing yards in both games. They're giving up, I think, a league leading or a top 3 in the NFL, 63 rushing yards a game and have 11 sacks through the first 4 games. So they're solid against the run and they have a solid front, but their secondary has been torched so far this year. Kirk Cousins, 400 and something yards last week, 400 and something yards 2 weeks ago. You look at what Adam Thielen and Diggs are both doing, and he still has Kyle Rudolph. I don't think that Dalvin Cook if he doesn't play, I don't think it's going to be that big of a loss for the Vikings in this matchup because I don't think they would be able to establish the run or be successful with the run regardless of if they were playing. But with Alshon Jeffrey coming back and the Vikings still having Harrison Smith and Xavier Rhodes who got embarrassed last week, they're going to be looking to rebound. I like the Vikings across the board in this matchup. I'm just not that high on the Eagles this year. While they're a solid team, they just, when you compare them to a team like the Vikings, to me it's just not the same talent level. I think the Vikings are slightly above them talent-wise. And I think that comes through this week, and I think this game also has some potential playoff ramifications. But I also think this game is going to shoot out a bit, and I think the 46 is way too low, so I'm taking the over. We'll leave Philly for San Francisco for the Cardinals at the 49ers. 49ers are 4.5-point favorites. This game's got an over-under of 40. Josh Rosen in at quarterback for the Cards. C.J. Beathard in at quarterback for the 49ers. Not the prettiest quarterback game, but what do we think about this one?
I like the upset in this one for the Cardinals. I think Josh Rosen is going to get his first win. I'm just not really a big fan of C.J. Beathard. I think that's his name, right?
Yeah.
He's a great backup. He can hand the ball off well, but he's not going to win you any games. And they are at home, but their defense has been very porous. Their offense hasn't. It's been okay since Garoppolo left, but that's because who did they play last week?
They played the Chargers.
The Chargers, exactly. The Chargers defense. So I think the Cardinals, actually, their defense is a little underrated. They haven't been playing good this year, but they do have some great players and that can make key stops and key plays when they need. So I think they're going to come up with a few defensive plays, and I think the Cardinals are going to get the win. What was the over-under for this one?
40.
40 points?
Yep.
I don't think that both defenses aren't very good at stopping anyone, so I'm going to take the over with this one.
I think last week was a little bit of a not sure what the proper word is, but I think it was let's say a little bit of a fluke for C.J. Beathard. He did put up 19 fantasy points. I don't remember his exact numbers, but he had a solid game. But I think that was more so because there wasn't much tape on him, and the Chargers, as we had talked about, the Chargers defense is pretty poor, and the 49ers were traveling from San Francisco to LA, so it's not like they really had much travel time either. So they had a lot of time to prepare for this game. I don't think they're going to have as much in this game in a divisional matchup. I'm gonna agree with you, and I think Josh Rosen gets his first win. Oh, home run Yankees! Aaron Judge, baby, home run Yankees, 5-4. Let's go! Let's go!
Let's go, baby. Let's go.
That's what I'm talking about. Needed that. What up, Kimbrel?
Oh my
Where were we? Cards 49ers. Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm gonna take the Cards across the board. Breida and Alfred Morris are both banged up. David Johnson looked like David Johnson a bit more last week. So I'm gonna take the Cardinals across the board. I'm gonna take the under in this game. I could realistically see this being 17-14 or 20-17. So I'm gonna stick with the under. We'll head out of San Fran and the Sunday night game. The battle for Texas. The Cowboys at the Texans. Texans are giving 3.5. This game's got a 45.5 point total. Who do you think prevails in the battle for Texas?
I'm gonna say I think that actually Dallas is gonna prevail, take the upset here. They're getting the points too, which is good because I just think that they're starting to get their feet under them, I guess you could say. And Zeke's starting to run the ball. If Zeke can produce like he did last week, I mean, I don't think that the Texans will be able to stop him. The Texans, I mean, they've underperformed this year. They're supposed to be good. They are dealing with a lot of injuries right now. They don't know if Will Fuller will play. They think that probably will, but Lamar Miller, their starting running back, he's a game-time decision. So they're dealing with a lot of stuff. So I definitely would take the Cowboys getting 3.5 points. What was the over/under for this?
45.5.
45.5. I'm gonna take the over here. I think it could be high scoring if the Texans are in comeback mode. They'll be chucking a lot if the Cowboys get up, and I'm gonna take the over.
I'm on the flip side. I like the Texans across the board. I don't like Dallas at all. Last week they put up 26 points, and I'd honestly be surprised if they pass that more than once this year. I just do not like this offense at all. The passing game for them is just abysmal. There's no go-to receiver. There's no strong wide receiver. There's no strong tight end. We did see what Zeke could do last week on the ground, and Zeke has been more involved in the passing game, but I just don't think the Cowboys have enough to keep up with the Texans offense. I love the Texans offense with or without Lamar Miller. The main concern for me is Will Fuller. If Fuller's out, that's worrisome. But even if Fuller's out, I think, last week they had, what was his name? Kiki Katu, I think was his name, step up while Hopkins was out. And that was a comeback win for the Texans. And Katu played a pretty decent part in that. So I like the Texans in this game at home. I just don't like the Cowboys offense at all. The Texans struggle against the pass, but the Cowboys can't pass. They still have a very good defensive line. They still have J.J. Watt. They still have Jadeveon Clowney and Whitney Mercilus. So I like the Texans in this game to go on a little two-game road streak for or win streak for the season. And I'm going to take the over. I just think... Actually, you know what? I'm going to take the under. I think, I could see the Cowboys getting up to about 20 points, but I could see it being about 24-20. That's about the highest I could see it. But, well, it's looking like that Judge home run was false hope.
Ooh.
The Redskins at the Saints for Monday Night Football. Saints are 6.5 point favorites. This game's got a 52.5 point total. Redskins coming off the bye week. Saints coming off of a 33-18 win at the Giants last week, where Alvin Kamara just went bonkers. What are we doing here?
I actually think that the Saints are going to win this game with some nice home cooking because they are much better at home than on the road. But I'm actually going to take the Redskins with the spread. I think they're getting plus 6.5 points, and I think the Redskins are surprisingly a decent team this year. Like they're a little under the radar, but I think they have a solid defense this year, and they're rejuvenated with AP and Alex Smith running the helm right now on offense. They're managing games pretty well. So I'm going to take the Saints straight up, but I'm taking the Redskins with the spread. And I'm actually going to take the over for this score of this game because I feel like any game that's a Saints game at the Superdome is going to be a shootout.
Yeah, I agree. While the Saints defense prior to last week had been struggling a bit, I just don't see how the Redskins are going to score enough points to keep up with the Saints. They don't throw the ball down the field. Josh Dotson is their downfield threat. Um, I think they try to establish the run again. I think they're going to use the same kind of philosophy that they did against Green Bay at home, where they want to use Adrian Peterson and establish the run and run the ball 24 times in the game and keep Drew Brees off the field. The Saints have been susceptible against the run, just like the pass, so I think the Redskins have a decent shot at that. But if the Saints jump ahead, the Redskins are in trouble. Which the Saints at home, that's one of my golden rules is you never bet against the Saints at home. So I'm taking the Saints across the board, given the 6.5. I think the Redskins are competitive for about the first half, the first three quarters, and then I think this game gets away from them towards the end, where they fall behind by 10 or 13, and it finishes around a 7 to 10 point win for the Saints. I'm going to take the under though. I just don't think. I think the Saints defense is playing much better. I don't think the Redskins are an explosive offense. So I'm going to take the under in this game. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. We'll see what happens. Like I said, it's been a couple wild weeks in the NFL, and fully expect that to continue this week. We appreciate you coming on. Glad we could have you back on, and we'll definitely
Thanks for having me.
we'll get you back on again in the future, and hopefully
Yeah, should definitely come back. I love doing it. Love talking football.
oh hell yeah, and the people want to hear other people than just me. They get bored with my voice. I don't blame them.
Sorry, I could be here when I can and give my insight.
Yeah, well, we like I said, we definitely appreciate it. And where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Smitty15155, or you can look me up on Facebook, Casey Smith. There are a lot of Casey Smiths, but
But you'll find.
find me.
And that's gonna do it. If you want to get in touch with me follow me on Twitter at Millsy021. You can follow the Nosebleed section at TNBS021. If you like what we're doing, give the video a like. If you want updates or if you just want to follow us, whatever it may be, please subscribe. And thanks for tuning in. Best of luck in week 5, and we'll see you in week 6.